Well, good evening. How's everybody doing? Oh, all messed up here, aren't I? Good evening, everyone. My name is Lee Love, and this is Photo Mentor TV. And glad you're here this evening. We're back in Studio A again. We were on the road last week at a photo shoot and also videotaping some tutorials for upcoming course material that we're working on. But anyway, great to have you here this evening. Glad you could join us. If you are, there's two ways you can watch us here this evening, and depending on where, if you're on one or the other, Facebook.photomentor.tv or YouTube.photomentor.tv. Either one of those will take you to the one of the streams that we have going on this evening. And anyway, want to thank you for joining us. We do this every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and great to have you with us. The goal here is to answer questions that you might have regarding all things photography related, whether you're a beginner or advanced, but primarily we like to focus on new photographers. Good evening, Dean. How are you, buddy? Nice to see you. Anyway, so tonight we're going to got a bunch of great questions coming in tonight. We're going to be discussing, and I think you guys will enjoy this. If you like what we're doing here this evening or anytime, you can watch the replays, of course. I'd really appreciate it if you would like the page and also maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel. That'd be great as well, and like that site over there. Helps very much. Let us know that you're watching and that you appreciate what we're working on here. Also share this information. If you find that, that this is useful to your fellow photographers, please share this so we can help them as well. We want to help out as many new photographers as possible, get the right information and accurate information, which is the whole reason for starting this process. I think we're in our 39th week right now, which is pretty cool. Anyway, before we go any further, I want to thank somebody that was a huge help. I want to thank Suzanne, my producer and friend. Suzanne has just been a tremendous help to me in so many ways. I can't even begin to tell you, but last week she was very helpful in producing the stream for last week because I was on the road. So she was gracious to let me use her StreamYard account and set me up and worked with me that way. I didn't have the best connection, unfortunately. That was my hotel problem, but was not any fault of hers. So thank you very much, Suzanne, for all your help. And I will put a link to Suzanne's webpage if you're interested in someone that can help you with your social media or in helping you with writing. She's a tremendous copywriter. So I'll put that in the YouTube and in the Facebook page if you want to check her website out. So anyway, thanks again, Suzanne, for all your help. Couldn't have done it without you. Let's see what we've got going on here. What else we have tonight? Kind of trying to get back into the groove of things. I will tell you a couple announcements. I'm going to be making some changes. I'm going to upgrade some graphics and things I've been working on for the show, which I'm excited about. And I'm also going to change some format things. I'm going to really dive a little deeper into the reviews. I don't know if you guys know or not, but the first Friday of every month, I do photo reviews, and I'm going to kind of amp these up a little bit more and put a little more meat behind them and some more work behind giving you some input that'd be helpful. But all reviews are anonymous, so anyone can submit their work. Yes, Dean, I do see your comments. So I don't know if you're if you're coming. It looks like you're coming in on YouTube. I do see them just fine. So anyway, so we do reviews the first Friday of the month, and our first Friday of the month. Yes, I did say that right. They're anonymous. Any camera, any experience, even if it's a smartphone, then feel free to submit your work. The images are reviewed on composition, technical merit, and story. So it's not, and it's really a great opportunity for you to get some professional feedback on your work. So if you're interested in submitting a photo or two, please go to review.photomentor.tv and you can submit your work there. The earlier, the better. Again, we got a couple of weeks, but I'd love to see your work. Also, if you are on one of the social media platforms, it'd be great to have you follow us on that on Facebook, of course, which you're probably on, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, and we'll follow you back, of course, and I'd be happy to. We do a lot of stuff during the week. We're publishing articles or information or quotes or things like that on what's going on in the photo industry and just in photography in general. So anyway, okay, enough with the announcements. Let me see real quick here. See if I can get this. So anyway, just want to let Dean know. Yeah, hi Dean. Just want to let you know we are seeing your comments. Thanks very much. And you say you did submit some shots to feedback. It was amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Dean. Appreciate all your help. And again, the whole purpose of this is just to help you guys get better at what you're doing and enjoy photography, either as a hobby or a profession if you want to get into it. I love helping people either technically, aesthetically, or business-wise. So if you have information or questions, please feel free to submit them. One way you can do that is you can always submit that information via help@photomentor.tv, or you can reach out to me on Facebook and or any of the other social media platforms I mentioned, and I'm glad to help you that way. Okay, so let's look at some of the questions we've got tonight. The first one is one of my favorites, by the way. Patrick asks, why does it seem that some folks are more into the tools of photography, cameras and lenses than artistry and skills? Patrick, this is a real pet peeve of mine as well. And I call it the shiny object syndrome. People get really enamored with cameras and lenses and all the gizmos that goes with it, and they can talk for hours and days about ISOs and about lenses and bokeh and all this stuff, because I spend a lot of time on these groups answering questions, but rarely do I see anyone talk about the aesthetics, about what it takes to make a great photo. And I don't know if you guys have been following, but I've been doing a series called Learning to See Like an Artist. I'm going to work on I've done 3 parts so far. I've got one more part I'm going to work on. And this is just kind of skimming of the surface of what it takes to create compelling images. But I don't understand it either. I don't understand why people are so hung up on the gizmos and the cameras and the technology and not on the artistry. I qualify, there are 3 kinds of photographers. There's the artists, pure artists. They don't know anything about cameras. They don't really care anything about cameras. You can hand them a camera, you can hand them a phone, and they'll make amazing pictures. I have a couple of friends like that, and they're just awesome. They see stuff that even I don't see. I describe it as they don't know a bus stop, an f-stop from a bus stop, but boy, they really know. They're an artist, pure artist. And I love that about it. I have some friend of mine that was a graphic designer, and he started picking up photography, and he just blew me away. It was amazing how good he was, because he had that. He understood white space, he understood composition, he understand all those issues, and so therefore that really made a big difference. So anyway, the second type of photographer is the technical photographer. They can spout specs and ISOs and noise and all this technical stuff about the cameras, but they don't know but when you look at their work, if they even shoot, there's nothing there. Their images are just bland and boring, and they're snapshots. And then there's the third kind of photography, which is kind of a little bit where I am, quite honestly, and that is I'm always struggling to be more artistic but I also have a leg in the technical aspect. So I can kind of go back and forth pretty quickly. But for me, I call it getting out of my own way, where I try to see more, learn more, create compelling images, and not focus on the technology because it gets in the way. It's also why I teach new photographers, don't worry about learning the aperture or the exposure triangle. Why not to worry? Don't worry about that. Use your phone if you have to, but it makes sense to learn composition, learn how to create a compelling image, because it's the compelling image that really makes a big difference and that people are going to notice, not the camera or the specs or anything like that. Again, as Dean is agreeing here, he says, it's too much gear syndrome. They call it GAS, gear acquisition syndrome. Now, let me be a little honest here about this, and be part of the AA program. I suffer from this. I have way more gear than I possibly need, but that's exactly why I know it's a problem, because I've bought a lot of stuff. I've used a lot of gear. I've had access to a lot of equipment. Manufacturers have given me equipment to use and things like that. Everything from Hasselblads to Leicas to things like that. And what I realize by having access to all this gear is it doesn't make me a better photographer. The pictures may be sharper, maybe a different color, but they're no more compelling. In other words, when I look at it and say they still suck, well, guess what? If I'm shooting with a $50,000 camera and my images still suck, I think I know where the problem is, and it's not in the camera. So anyway, don't mean to dwell on that, but that's an important thing to focus on. So my approach is, when I teach photography and to my students, is that I focus on learning to see first. Learn to see the light. Learn to see an object. Don't look at what it is. Look at the space around it. Learn to see using these 7 common tools, or in the language of art, and then worry about the technical aspect. I can teach the technical to anybody. Anyway, sorry about that. I could go on and on about this, and I don't mean to do that. Okay. Next question is from Shay, and it says, I did a free photo session, and now they're asking for all the images, including unedited versions. What do you do? Okay, this is a common question. I see this over and over. I've answered it a lot of times, but I think it's worth answering again. And here's the deal. First of all, the short answer is no. You just don't do it. Here's an analogy. Would you go to an Stephen can't think of his name now, gone blank, King, or any novelist, and say, "Wow, I really like your last book. Could I get copies of the manuscripts before you finish it, so I can kind of see, what they look like unedited?" Well, of course not. I mean, it's just even ridiculous to even ask that. How about an album? Can you go download an album and then contact the artist and say, "Wow, I really like your latest song. Can I get the raw tracks so I can mix my own album?" No, of course not. When you produce, if you give your work away unedited, first of all, and all the images, then you're just a button pusher. You can get anybody with a camera to do that part. It's the art comes in how you see, how you create, and how you process. That's the lab part. So you wouldn't give your raw images to anyone. I wouldn't, and I don't think you should either. So absolutely not. Set that up ground rules up front. Let them know they're not going to get all those images, especially. So let me back up. Here's the thing that bothers me about this question. There's something else going on here. When people ask this question, in my opinion, they don't see something. There's something they don't see that they think you shot. There's something they don't like. There's a reason why they ask that question, and I don't know what it is. There's something else going on there, and that's what you need to explore and dive into and figure out why they're asking that question to begin with. So, okay, hang on one second. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any questions here on Facebook, because I don't know why, but I never seem to be able to get this right for some reason. I'm sure I'm on Facebook, actually. I don't see the stream. I hope it's there. Anyway, so Tracy says, I have a Nikon D750. When I put it in the charger, it won't charge. Can you give me some suggestions? Well, first of all, batteries are good for about 2 years, depending on the battery. And so you want to make sure that you are that you have good, nice batteries, good batteries, quality batteries. But I also recommend that you don't use cheap batteries. Now, here's what I mean by that. So we spend a lot of money on all this equipment. Okay, first of all, so if you look at the difference between these two batteries, you can get a Nikon battery, an ENL 15 for $54. You can get a Watson battery or probably some other battery for about $35. So there's a difference of $19.50 between the two of those. So you just spent, let's say, $1,000 on a Nikon D750. You've got, I don't know, maybe $1,000 lens or whatever, even if it's not $1,000 lens. You've got a laptop, you've got all this equipment, you spent all this money on your photography, and then what do? You put a cheap battery in there. So it dies, it doesn't last as long. And these batteries actually have a chip in them. Most people don't realize this, and that talks to the camera, and the camera can regulate that and get information from that battery as far as the number of cycles times the number it's charged, that kind of thing. So my point is, why cheap out on something as simple as a battery when it's so inexpensive? Now, here's what I do recommend. I have one or two maybe third-party batteries, but here's the way I do it. I always have at least two Nikon or two brand batteries, more of them usually. I have more than that, but I like to have at least two of those. Then if I want to get a third battery as a backup, then maybe that one would be a third-party one, just as a kind of a safety. But I always have two manufacturer brand batteries, a minimum, to start with, because I just want to know that those batteries are going to last and they're going to work. In my experience, what I found, manufactured batteries always work better. They always last longer and they hold a charge longer. So it's just my experience. So for me, 15, 20, 25 bucks difference is not worth it after I spent thousands of dollars on all this other equipment to cheap out on a battery. I mean, you wouldn't buy a Lamborghini and then put, 7-Eleven gas in it, would you? Or something like that. You're going to put high performance fuel in it. You wouldn't. So it's the same kind of thing. If you're going to buy a nice camera, then you want to, otherwise, if it's got a dead battery, a camera with a dead battery is called, a brick. It doesn't do any good. So anyway, that's just not to rail on that too much. So, okay. Let's see. Jessica says, what can I do to learn more about ISO, shutter speed, and aperture? Wow. This is a good one. And I don't want to be self-serving, but I'm going to do it anyway for a second. And that is, haven't really made much of an announcement here on this, but first of all, one of the things that I'm doing is I am launching a course just for photographers. Okay, it's called Photomentor Academy. And we're about 2 weeks out from launching the beta course on this. Now, the way this is going to work is it's not going to be open to everyone. It's only going to be open to the founding members, and this is going to be very, very limited in the number of people that are allowed to get in the first round. And the reason for that is because, number one, not everything's going to be there, but number two, I'm only looking for people that are willing to give feedback and input on the kind of things that you want to learn. You're the one that's going to drive this course material. I mean, not me. I have certainly it outlined. I can go on and on and on about all the material I've already started working on, but I need your feedback to make sure that we're on target. So what's going to happen is the photomentoracademy.com is the site it's going to be. If you're interested, you can go there now, and you can put in your name and your name and email, and you can say, I want to be notified of the beta program, the founding members program, or I want to be notified of when you go public with the full course. It's up to you. But this is, a great, there's some things I'm working on that are very, very different than what you're going to find anywhere else. Like, for example, the question about how do you do ISO and that kind of stuff. Well, one of the things is that I've already created some tools for that, some animation and some graphics for that are very different than I've seen anyone else teach. And the reason is because I don't agree with the way they're teaching. When people teach ISO, shutter speed, what they call the exposure triangle, that is an old model. That model was taught back when we were shooting film, and everything was manual. So there's nothing you need to know that. Don't get me wrong, but the way they're teaching it doesn't make sense. So anyway, I'm not going to go on any much detail on that. But if you are interested, go to photomentoracademy.com, put in your name and email address, and I'll get back to you with that information, Jessica, and you can see for yourself if you think this is different and will help you understand this. I've taught hundreds and hundreds of photographers, and believe me, this is the easiest thing to teach. The hardest part to teach is learning to see and learning to tell a story. This part here, the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture are the easiest thing to learn. So don't fret about that. Okay. Let's see here. Make sure I'm getting my okay. I don't want to ignore anybody. Okay. Krista says I'm shooting with a Nikon D5200 and wanted your advice on switching from Nikon to Canon. Well, it's just kind of a tough question to answer, Krista, because first of all, I don't know anything about the kind of work you're doing. So you'd have to kind of give me some insight into where you're doing portraiture, family, sports, that type of thing. But here's the first question I would ask you. Why? What is it that your D5200 isn't doing that you think another brand camera would do? And this goes back a little bit to the whole discussion we were having earlier about cameras and gear and all this kind of stuff, because people think that, oh, my friends have a Canon, it must be a better camera. Or 3 of them have a camera, this camera, and it must be better. Or so-and-so has a Sony and it must be better. It doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter what camera you have. What you need to do, if you're looking for another camera, is you need to take that camera, you need to rent one, borrow one, somehow shoot with it for a couple of days, and see, or at least go into your local shop or somewhere and look at the camera and hold it. Because what I've discovered is some cameras people really love this camera. They talk highly about it. And I go in and look at it and I hold it in my hand. It's just not comfortable. It's not comfortable physically. I don't like the menu system. It's not easy to navigate. It just doesn't work for me. That is more important to me than the brand, because there's no bad cameras. Nowadays, all these cameras are amazing. They all do way more than you could possibly ever want. The only thing that's bad is photographers. A lot of bad photographers, not any bad cameras anymore. So it's not like when we were first starting out, when you were dealing with, cameras that were, mediocre or that type of thing. They're all great. Almost the Fuji, the Sony, the Panasonic, the Nikon, the Canon. They're just all amazing cameras nowadays. So it's not about the camera. Sorry. So it doesn't matter what brand you switch to. It's still going to be the same issue, and that is learning to see, learning to tell a story. So, okay. So Beth says, when shooting kids or short subjects, you squat down to their level. It's a great question, Beth. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So again, if you go back and look at the couple of the courses that I was doing, or some of the sessions I did called Learning to See Like an Artist. But basically, here's the answer. If you're shooting at eye level with someone, then you're psychologically you're an equal. If you shoot down on somebody, then you typically are making them softer, demure, and a little bit weaker. It could not weaker and less of a person, but it's just a different perspective. So, and if you shoot up on somebody, it makes them look stronger and bigger and bolder. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I've done both. In fact, I will do both a lot of times. I'll purposely start with one and then shoot at different angles just to see, because sometimes you don't know. And also sometimes looking up at somebody, you can get something in the background that you can't get when you're at eye level or when you're shooting down on them. So it's not cut in stone. It means like you can't shoot. It's not you can't shoot down on somebody. It's just you got to be aware of that, and you just a few inches up or down from the eye line will make a difference. So try that, see what it'll do. But the short answer is with kids and short subjects or with dogs or animals, I do like to shoot at eye level. I think that makes a more compelling image personally for the stuff that I've been doing. And I do love to photograph people, so that is why that's the case. Okay. Let's see here. Next question. I'm going to see here why I'm okay. Hang on one second. Okay, let me just make sure you guys are seeing my comments. Apologize about that. Okay. All right. So the next question is, as a beginner photographer, where do you find your biggest challenge? Well, I'm not a big beginner photographer, but I work with a lot of beginner photographers. So let me kind of answer it from that perspective. And that is that I think the biggest problem, the biggest challenge I see most new photographers have is the technology. They get overwhelmed by the camera. And again, I see people over and over again given the bad advice, and that is, oh, you got to shoot on manual. You got to learn the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO rate and how that works. The exposure, what's called the exposure triangle, and you do need to know that. Don't get me wrong, but that's not the first thing you need to know. The first thing you need to know is how to create a compelling image. I don't care if you're using an iPhone or a Hasselblad. So as a beginner photographer, the first thing you need, the challenge you need to look at is how to learn to see. And what I could go in to spend a whole hour on just that part alone, but learning to see is the most important thing. Now, I can tell you what most people are going to say when you ask them about what, as a beginner photographer, what kind they're going to say. I have trouble with composition. I have trouble with lighting. I have trouble with posing. I have trouble with editing. Those are the top four. And then if they're doing this as a career, then the next question is going to be that they want to, that they're having trouble with business, getting new business. So anyway, that's where I think really you're going to find most people have this issue, and it's going to be the same issue over and over again with most people. So anyway, and hello, Brittany. Thank you much for joining us. If you have any questions, be sure and leave them here, but it's nice to see you on. Hope you've been doing well. And thanks for jumping in here this evening. Always nice to see you guys on. Okay. So the next question is from Caitlin, and says, where do you recommend I store my photos, backups, memory cards, memory cards or thumb drives? This is an excellent question and something I really would like to. I really need to spend more time on. I need to do a whole, session on this. But the first of all, there's a couple of ways. If you can store your original images. Oh my gosh, excuse me. If you can store, I apologize. If you can store your original images on cards, that's fine. But it does take up a lot of cards to do that. Now, they're not that expensive nowadays, so it's possible to be able to do that. But typically what's going to happen is you're going to get more and more images. Maybe you're shooting video occasionally, that kind of thing. And so it can use up a lot of storage. So what I recommend you do is consider going with something, not this brand, doesn't really matter, but the point is, what this is a RAID storage system. So let me back up a second. First of all, don't store your images on your local hard drive, either a laptop or desktop. And here's the reason why. You want to store them on an external drive that just has images on it. And the reason for that is if and when your computer fails, you don't want to have everything on that computer. Your computer is more likely to fail than an external hard drive. So you want to use an external hard drive. You can use one of these ones that plug in with the USB and are powered, like for a laptop. Those will work fine for a while. But what happens is, if you're like me, I've got them stacked up like cordwood, and they're all over the place. So I had to come up with something better, because it just gets crazy. Um, so you want to have them on a external storage device. That's the first thing. And the reason is, if your computer fails, you can always take that drive, take it, plug it into your new computer or another computer somewhere in the house or a friend's computer, and still have access to all your images in editing. That's the first step. If you're using Lightroom or any other program like that, Lightroom stores all your edits. So when you make a change and you do white balance and things, it stores that in a database called a catalog. So what you want to do is you want to store the original catalog on your laptop or hard drive, your internal hard drive, but then you want to keep a backup. And there's a way to do that. When you exit Lightroom, you can tell it to back up. You keep a backup of the catalog only. It's not that big. Catalog on the external hard drive as well. So you have 2 copies of the catalog. The catalog does not contain images. The catalog only contains information about the edits and where the files are located. But the files, the images, the raw files, and the JPEGs are stored on the external hard drive along with a backup catalog. The main catalog is going to be on the internal computer hard drive. Okay, so that's the first thing. If you don't use Lightroom, it doesn't matter about the catalog part, but you want to be able to, there's a whole different ways of doing that. But you want to store those files on an external hard drive. Now, you want to store them on something like this, okay, because the interesting thing about this particular system, you're looking for something that uses, again, like you can start with the single floppy or single hard drive, but at some point, here's where you're going to want to go to. This system is called a RAID 1 system. It has 2 drives in it. And the way that works is it's got 2 hard drives, drive 1 and drive 2. Let's say they're 4 terabyte hard drives. The 2 drives only look like one hard drive to your software and to your computer. So therefore, even though you have 2 drives and they're both, let's say, 4 terabytes, it's not 8 terabytes. It's still 4 terabytes only. But what happens is the hardware, the drive the drive system that I'm talking about, has firmware, has hardware in here, and what it does, it makes a copy automatically. So when you write to drive 1, which you only see as one drive, by the way, then it automatically, without you doing anything, makes an exact copy of that data over on drive 2. So here's the beauty of this. If drive 1 fails, you can unplug it and drive 1 will keep running automatically. You never miss a beat. You buy a new hard drive, you plug it in, and then the data will automatically from drive 2 replicate itself back to drive 1. So it's got redundancy there. Same thing if drive 2 fails. If drive 2 fails, you can just unplug it, put a new drive in. It will automatically restore itself and correct itself. So this is what's called RAID 1. It's a mirrored system. They're not that expensive, but this is the way I recommend you store. If you start getting serious about your images and you want to. Now, this is not a backup. Don't get me wrong. This is not a backup. This is to protect against a failed hard drive, which is going to be most likely the problem you're going to have. If you erase something off drive 1, guess what? It's going to erase it off drive 2 as well. So it's not a backup. And it's not going to, it's on the key is it's just really trying to protect against a physical failure of your hard drive. So that's the value in that. So that's called a RAID 1 array, 2 drives in there. You can get them with more drives if you want, and it's even more redundant. But for now, I just stick with something. And I looked one up. I think this one I was showing you was made by, they're really kind of a Mac house more than anything. But that'll work on anything, Windows, it doesn't matter. and they're USB or Thunderbolt, depending on which one you get. But I think the one I looked at was $149. No drives in it. You have to put drives in it, but still, the chassis was $149, and then you could put whatever size drives you want in there. Definitely the best investment you'll make in something like that. So anyway, sorry, I don't mean to go off on that, but it's a very important topic. And because look, I have over 250,000 images that I've been shooting for many, and that stuff is client work that I just can't replace. So I have it backed up in multiple locations, and I won't go into my storage system because it's just crazy, 48 terabytes I think I have right now. But the point is, you want to be able to have that data available. If you lose that, then it's okay if there's pictures of your vacation, but if it's client work, then you've got to have a way to keep that data safe. So anyway, okay. Okay, here's another. Do you have any recommendation for a good quality printer or a quality and affordable printer? Tammy, I got to tell you, I hate printing. Printing is the bane of my existence. It just never seems to work right. They always are a problem. You know, the Epsons are really nice printers, great quality, but if you don't use them every day or every week, the heads get clogged, and then that's a problem. I just don't like printing myself, and I don't do that much printing, quite honestly, because I'm a commercial photographer. My clients are getting digital images that I've edited for them. But what I do recommend, if you want a nice printer for some stuff you're doing casually, not for client work, I would say I would look at the Canon line of printers. I think they have a really nice line of printers. They're really good quality. The colors are nice and vibrant. One of the things most people liked about the Epson is they tend to have a longer longevity in the print quality, like 100 years or something like that. But the Canons have gotten much better, and none of us are going to be around by the time there's print fails anyway. But anyway, I would look at the Canon line of printers. I think you're going to find those are really nice. But my recommendation, quite honestly, is not to do your own printing, especially if you're doing it for clients, is I always use a lab. And I can send the files to the lab. They'll print them. They can print them on all kinds of paper. If it's messed up, they'll redo it. You get a relationship with the lab. They got a good quality. You can get, and some of the labs I work with even will drop ship. So they'll put my name on it, and they will send the prints directly to the client on the few occasions that I've had to do some prints. And also, if you're doing fine artwork, you need some really nice papers. Some of these labs, Bay Photo, I think, is one, has some amazing, all the Epson, Hahnemühle, Moab papers that you would want, really fine art papers they can print on. So that's would be my recommendation if you're really going to do get serious about printing. Someone just offered me a printer. In fact, just the other day, I think it was one of them was a 48-inch printer. I didn't that one. And the other one was a 14. We'll do a 14-inch print or 17-inch, 24-inch print or something like that. And I just said thanks, but I don't have room for it, and I'm trying to get rid of stuff. So that's just my view on printing. Sorry. Okay. Vi says, any recommendations on camera rain covers? Yes, I do. There's a couple of them you can go with. It depends, again, on the kind of, rain covers you're trying to work on and, how serious you are. So if you are a sports photographer and you got to be outside, which is, I shot sports professionally for a number of years and also was a photojournalist. And so you can't just go inside because it's raining. That's not the way it works. You've got to get the shot. You got to be out there in the rain anyway. So Think Tank makes some of the best rain gear. There's also another one called Aqua, I think it is. But Think Tank has become very popular. And you can't really tell from this picture, but there's holes on the side. You can put your hands in there and you can still operate your camera. And there's a clear plastic on the back so you can still see the images and you can operate the camera that way. So this is if you're going to be serious about it and you got to be outside. If you're just looking for something that's like just simple, and you're gonna, in case you're caught in the rain or mist or something like that, then I would recommend you look at the Optech. I really like their stuff. They have some rain sleeves. Comes a little package. There's like 2 of them in there. It's they make different kinds, whether you have a point and shoot or whether you have um, a hybrid camera or one with a flash on it. But these are real nice. I think they're $7, $8. They're not very expensive. There's 2 of them in a package. And you can reuse them or you can throw them away, but they look a lot more professional than garbage bags, which of course I've always have in my camera bag as well. But I don't normally use those. But if you need them, you cover some stuff up, then they work. But these are much nicer than that. So I'd recommend you look at the Optech rain sleeves. I think they will do a nice job for you. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here going on this evening. Okay. So the next question is for Christina. And she says, I like taking action shots. Maybe you can do some family photos. I have a Nikon L830 or L8, 830 right now, and grew out of it. I think she outgrew it. Need something better. What do you recommend? I don't usually normally go into doing this kind of question because there's just so many of them out there. But I would recommend, there's 2 cameras you could look at. One would be the 2 that I think probably the most popular right now, that I would recommend looking at the Nikon D5200. It goes on sale a little bit from time to time, but roughly anywhere from $400 roughly to $500 for that camera. Nice camera, very, very popular. You'll see tons of them out there on the Facebook groups and things like that. You can get a 2-lens kit or a 1-lens kit. Again, I don't know how the pricing, if this is an older slide, but this would be one recommendation. And if you want, the other one I would look at would be the Canon, the T7. There's also a T7i, and that's also a nice camera to get started with. And so I'd recommend you look at either one of those. They're both about the same price, both pretty much same features, functionality, that type of thing. The nice thing about the Nikons are the warranty is a little longer. The lenses, it's a 1-year warranty on the camera body like most of them, but the lens warranty is 5 years, where on the Canon it's 1 year. I don't know why that is, but that's just the way it is. So anyway, so I would recommend either the Canon or the Nikon. There's a number of others, but these are probably one of the 2 most popular. And I'd say start with something looking at one of these things. Once again, though, what you want to do is you want to go in, put your hands on them, look at them, see how the menus operate, see how they feel in your hand, and see what makes sense to you, because that's going to have a big effect on it, on what you decide on. Okay. Hope that helps, Christina. Okay, Katie says, I'm looking for a 600mm lens to take photos of wildlife. I didn't really ask. I assume you mean, so there is a 600mm, and you didn't, for both Nikon and Canon and Sony. It's about I think it's an f4, but it's also about 12 grand. So I doubt that's the one you're asking about. Really nice camera. I've shot with that lens quite a bit, and it's terrific. It's a big piece of glass, but it's probably not the one you're looking for. So what you're probably looking at is something like the, I would say the Sigma or the Tamron. And I don't know. I thought I had a picture of a Tamron here. I don't know if I do or not. I think I do. So the Tamron, there's 2 of them. The Tamron, that's the Sigma, isn't it? Maybe I don't have a picture of the Sigma as well. Anyway, sorry. There's the Tamron 150 to 600 is a great lens. It's also something I recommend you take a look at. Or the Sigma. Now, the Sigma, both of them are about the same price, except the Sigma offers 2 versions. They have a contemporary version, and what they call the sport model. The sport model is about twice, almost twice the price of the contemporary version. They're both a 6.3 aperture, but the difference is the sport version is weather sealed and has a few more elements of glass. I'd say it's a little sharper. I've shot with both of these, are really nice lenses, but perfect for wildlife and that type of thing. But anyway, so I'd say you look at that or the Tamron 150 to 600 as well. And if you are shooting Nikon, I don't remember if you mentioned that or not. Nikon also makes a very nice lens, which is a 200 to 500. Now it's a f5.6 fixed, where this is a variable aperture, but that's a super sharp lens. I've been really impressed with the quality of that lens. Every time I've seen an image or shot with it, it's very sharp. But if you're using a different brand, Canon, Sony, for example, then the Sigma or the Tamron is available for both of those mounts, and you could that would be my suggestion if you're going that route. Okie dokie. Let's see. Next question is from Mary Perez. And Mary says, can you give me your opinion on the Tamron 25 to 70 2.8 for Nikon? Can I see some pics? Okay, so there's a couple of questions here. A couple of points. First of all, I don't think Tamron makes a 25 to 70. They make a 24 to 70, and I'm pretty a 2.8. I'm pretty sure that's the lens you're asking about, Mary. But the thing is, and this is the part of the reason I want to take this question, is because looking at images aren't going to help you. So I see this quite often. People say, oh, I'm looking for this camera or this lens. Can you give me some samples? Well, number one, you don't even know if it was shot with that lens or not, or that camera. It could be anything. And so it would look amazing. Number two, you don't know the conditions that the image was shot in. And number three, you don't know the capability of the photographer. So looking at somebody's image of a lens or a camera is really not going to do you any good. It's kind of like asking for settings. I see this quite often. People are like, hey, great image, what are the settings? Well, the settings are going to be different every single place you go. There's a daytime, nighttime, daylight, morning, noon, night. All that's going to change. So the settings are irrelevant. And so asking for settings or asking to see an image are not going to help you. And quite honestly, I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but it's actually naive. And it kind of shows that you really don't understand that much about the camera technology. So, for example, if you want to see that lens, okay, first of all, go to their website. This is the 24 to 70 2.8 Tamron that you're asking about, and they have sample pictures on there. So you can go in here. This is one that was shot with that lens. Okay. So I don't know. Does that look like a good image to you? Here's another sample image on their site. That's kind of interesting. Looks nice. I like the perspective and things like that. This is another one. Okay. Horse is like, okay, enough already. Get out of my face. This is it's kind of a nice picture. But then again, look at this one. This was shot with that same lens, and to me, it's awful. I mean, that's just terrible. I would never put that on. I can't believe Tamron even use that on their website as a sample for what that lens can do. The contrast ratio is all messed up, in my opinion. The blown out highlights in the background, you can't really see the foreground very much. Anyway, it's just not a very good example. So if I showed you that lens or that image from the lens versus this image, which would you still buy the camera? Actually, now I look at it, that's actually the same picture, isn't it? Realize that. Yeah, wonder why they're different. I have to look at that. Anyway, so the point is that doesn't really tell you anything. And so it's nice to be able to look at some images, but I would say that, first of all, the 24 to 70 Tamron 2.8 is a very nice lens, and I definitely would suggest you take a look at it. and I think you'd find it very, very nice. It's going to be up there with their higher end lenses. Anything that's a fixed 2.8 is going to be typically a good quality lens. And again, it's a 24 to 70, not 25 to 70. And this uses the VC is their vibration control. That's the term they use for vibration control. And the DI, I believe, has to do with telling you that it's for full frame camera primarily, but it will work on a APS-C also. So anyway, hope that helps. Let's see what we got here. Oh, all right. So the next question is from Tina. I think this is the last question for this evening, and this is a great question. Thank you, 1010. I appreciate it. So the 1010's question was, and of course, if you guys know me, I love lighting. I'm obsessed with lighting. I just think I light everything I shoot, indoor, outdoor. So she's got a situation where she has a set of Paul Buff, which are alien. Typically, they're referred to as alien bees, but Paul Buff Einstein flash. That's the higher end version of their flash system. She also has a Paul C. Buff remote triggers and receivers, which is nice, so she can control those lights, dial them up, dial them down, turn them on, turn them off, which is a great thing. Also, but she also has the Godox 860, which is a speed light, and some newer strobes as well. You know, some cheap, newer 300-watt second strobes. So the question is there a way you can mix and match all of these? And hang on, Brittany, I'll answer your question in just a second. If there's a way to mix and match these things together and multiple flashes. And yes, there absolutely is. So there's a couple of ways. So one way to do it would be if you had remote triggers on everything, you can control them. And that's not really practical when you're dealing with multiple brands. So what I recommend is to use if you've got remote control of the Einsteins, then use those as your main lights. You can dial those up and down. Okay, so then what you want to do is you want to be able to take your other lights, and I will show you here. So this is what the back of the Paul Buff Einstein looks like. And it's a nice light. I got a set of these, I think 2 or 3 of them myself. I don't use them that often. More stuff I bought that I need to get rid of because I now have something different. But anyway, there. But the thing is, if you look, let's see if I can do this here without messing this up too bad. Hang on one second. I will try and I can make this a little bigger for you. Okay. All right. So if you look over here on the top, you see this little dome, okay, on the very top. Well, that dome is a sensor. And what that will work with is you can tell the flash to use when it sees another flash to trigger, to go off. It's called optical trigger, sometimes called optical slave, but it's an optical trigger. And so what that will do is when it sees one light, it will trigger another light. Now, if you take the, so that would, I would use those as the main light. So then the next thing is if you take something like the Godox, which she says she has, and if you look again, it has a trigger on that one as well, or it's a little different to see. It's that one is used so that on that one it is right here. They call it optical control sensor. Okay, sorry for the quality. Zoom is not a very good picture, but that little sensor right there will do the same thing. So when the Einsteins are triggered, the Godox will see that, and then it will go off as well. It will trigger it as well. And so therefore, you don't have to have a radio or spend any extra money. You can just put the Godox or any of the other flashes in the optical trigger mode, and then away you go. So when when the Einsteins go off, this flash will also go. I've done this many, many times. So even though that maybe I carry some expensive pro photo flashes with me, I also have some inexpensive speed lights like this. They're Nikons, I think. I carry a couple of those in my bag just as backup because you never know what's going to happen when you're going to need something like that. So I can turn those on, throw some batteries in them, and set them up as with optical trigger. And then when my pro photos are triggered, the speed lights will also go off. And so it's a great way to add hair light, backlight, light in another room, whatever. And so it's just a great way to go. So that's the way 1010 that I would suggest that you do this, is to set up your Einsteins as your main lights. Set up, and almost every, I don't know any light that doesn't have this. If you, and they have to be really, really old one that doesn't have an optical trigger. And even if it didn't, they actually make an external optical trigger you could take and plug into it and trigger it as well. But I'm sure the Newers, and I know the Godox does for sure, has this. So you set those up as your remote light, so to speak. Now, here's the drawback. Let me back up. So when the Einsteins go off, the Godox will trigger or the Newer will trigger. Now, here's the only drawback, and that is it's manual. So what I would suggest you do is you set up your Einsteins, you get that lighting dialed in the way you want it. Okay? Then turn on the other light, let's say the Godox. Turn that on, maybe at 8th power, depending on where you're going to be placing the light. Trigger it and see what that looks like. If it's enough power, great. If it's not, you can dial it up or dial it down. Now, also, and I'm not going to get too geeky on you guys, but there's something called inverse square law. And what that means is you can take that speed light and you can move it back about a foot, and the light will drop off much faster than just moving it a foot. So in other words, instead of having to mess with the light and dial it in, dial it back, move the power, just take that light and move it a little bit, or move it closer or further away, and that will make a huge difference. It's a really fast way to change your lighting power, the power of your lighting, without actually adjusting the light itself. So give that a try. I think that'll help you quite a bit, and I think that'll do a good job for you there. Hang on one second. See what Suzanne has to say. So Suzanne says, the lens isn't the key to the shot either, like this thinking. Nope, she's right. It's not the Tamron 24-70. It's going to be the lighting really more than anything. I mean, that's going to make a big difference. Of course, we all want nice lenses. I mean, that's where the real investment comes in. Okay, so Brittany. Hello, Brittany. Good, nice to see you again. Brittany asked, do you have a recommendation for a full frame camera for a first timer? Yes. Well, first of all, let me go back to what I said before. You want to kind of go in and try one out and see how it feels. Look at the menus. I would say look at the Nikon D750. Now that camera's been replaced by the D8780, but there's still quite a few of them around. It's a real workhorse. I know tons of people that have that camera and love it. And even though they have higher end cameras, more expensive cameras, mirrorless cameras, they still have that D750 because it's just such a great camera. Great low light camera. And you can get one used if you want to try and do that for probably a pretty good price. What you're trying to do is find something with a relatively low shutter count. I'd say low would be 60,000, 30,000, and below would be a great deal. If you can get one lower than that, that's even better. But the shutter on that thing is good for probably, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000, maybe 300,000 shots. So it's not so much an issue if you got, 60 or 70,000 images on it. So that'd be one thing. The other one, if you can get the D780, that would be a nice camera. If you're looking at mirrorless, then look at the Nikon, the Z6. They came out with the Z6 Mark II. So there's going to be some good deals to be found on the Z6. If you're looking at Canon, the 6D Mark II or Mark I, the original one, is also a great camera to look at. Those are both full frame cameras. Those would be a good choice in my opinion. Let's see, what else? Probably forgetting some. I would say start with looking at those two. You could go with the Sony. I'm not a, you know, some people like the Sony, some people don't. But I would say look at the Canon or the Nikon. And part of the reason is it's been around longer. There's more accessories. You're going to get a better pricing on them. And so if you're just getting started, it's a great way to go. I also don't think there's anything wrong with just a crop sensor camera. Now, I think you're already shooting with that, if I'm not mistaken. But again, now I like full frame only because if it's 24 millimeters, 24 millimeter, I don't have to kind of figure out what the field of view it's gonna be. But either one would work. So anyway, I hope that helps. I don't know, it's not a great question. If you have a follow up, I'd be glad to answer it. You can ask in the Facebook group or contact me directly, and if you have any examples or something you want an opinion on, be sure and give me a reach out to me. I'm glad to help you out. Let's see. Again, we do have, I think I might have mentioned this before. We do have a Facebook group if you're interested in joining. It's a little different than the other Facebook groups. We don't tolerate people demeaning someone or just posting a link or being mean. This is a place to learn. And it's a relatively small group. We don't have hundreds of thousands of users on there, and that's on purpose. So it's a little more individual attention. But if you're interested in applying, you can go to photomentor.tv/join and gives a little information about yourself, what you're struggling with, and once I get that, I will add you to the group. This is the purpose for doing this, having you go this route as opposed to just other groups, is that number one, it eliminates spammers. Number two, gives me a chance to get to know the people that are joining the group, which is important to me. And also, I can just, find out a little bit about you. So that's the key there. Anyway, hope that helps. Okay. I think that is about it. Unless you guys have any other questions. You're right, Brittany, you're more than welcome. I hope that helps. I know it's not there's a lot of other information I could give you, but again, I'm happy to help you. Reach out. What you guys don't know is I have access to a lot of equipment. I shoot with a lot of different stuff, new equipment, old equipment. I have a lot of relationships with manufacturers, so I get a chance to play with a lot of different gear, and so that gives me some insight as to what you might want to look at and what you may consider, usable, whatnot. So anyway. Okay. Again, thank you guys. I appreciate you joining me tonight. And I always love seeing you guys here. I appreciate all the questions. Again, reach out anytime. Be sure, if you're interested, join the Facebook group or just leave a comment on the Photomentor TV webpage and our Facebook page. And once again, if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing with Photomentor Academy, got a couple of weeks away. We're going to be making an announcement on that. And many of you already know I've been working with you guys for almost a year. And I know have a sense of my commitment to helping people. And so this is going to be, I'm going to amp this up considerably more. It's going to be a lot more help than I've even been giving you so far. So anyway, I think you guys will find this pretty interesting. Anyway, thanks again. I appreciate it. If you're, again, follow us on the social medias if you're interested. And be glad to have you. I'll follow you back, as I mentioned before. Also, don't forget that the first Friday of the month is the photo review. Reviews are anonymous, any experience. So be happy to, I'd love to see your work. Be sure and submit that at review.photomentor.tv. And until next time, I think we will say goodnight. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, guys, and have a good week.